Have you ever wondered why you try so hard to be something you are not? Why do you run? Why do you seek? Why do you strive so hard to achieve an ideal that never seems to come true? Perhaps the great secret of life is not in becoming something new, but in simply being what you already are, deeply, essentially, inevitably. Because you see, what you are now is already the dance of the universe in full expression. There is nothing to achieve, no ultimate prize, no idealized version of yourself waiting in the future. These are all illusions of the mind tricks of the ego that fears disappearing. We live in a world that teaches us to seek relentlessly, seek success, seek love, seek security. But this seeking in itself is a form of desperation in disguise, because the seeker is the one who has not yet realized that he already is. He is already complete, already whole, already an inseparable part of the great tapestry of being. When you really look, when you stop and be silent, when you listen to the whisper of the trees and the sound of your own blood running through your veins, you realize you were never separate. You never needed to become anything other than what you are now. In an attempt to control, we become rigid, tense as drums, red as beets, trying to hold back the uncontrollable. We try to hold on to life, like someone trying to hold water in their hands. But the tighter we hold on, the more it flows. Life cannot be held back, it is lived. And animals know this. They do not worry about being more than they are. The bird does not try to be a fish. The river does not try to be a mountain. Everything follows its natural course. Everything is already perfect in its own way. We humans have forgotten. We have forgotten that the purpose of life is not to get somewhere, but simply to be alive. And being alive is a miracle in itself. Every breath, every heartbeat, every ray of sunlight breaking through closed eyelids is a cosmic symphony celebrating existence. But we are so busy trying to understand the score that we forget to dance to the music. You don't have to do anything to be who you are. You don't have to prove yourself, justify yourself, or correct yourself. What you are now is as extraordinary as a spinning galaxy, as mysterious as the brightness of the stars, as natural as the rain that falls without asking permission. The real you is not a mask. It is not an idea. It is not a constructed narrative. It is consciousness itself taking human form. If you walk into the silence of a distant forest and remain still there, you will feel something. It will not be an explanation. It will not be a concept. It will be a remembrance, a deep recognition that you are not separate, you are not alone, you are not small. You are part of the whole. You are the whole. And when you become what you are, everything changes. Not because the world changes, but because your perception changes. You stop resisting, you stop fighting the current, and that's when you start to flow. You accept what is not as resignation, but as celebration, because by accepting, you come into harmony with the rhythm of life. And that rhythm cannot be taught. It can only be felt. Self-knowledge is not found in books, not in teachers, not in theories. It is found in forgetting what you were told you should be. It is found in surrendering to the present moment. It is found in looking within without fear of what you will find. Because what is inside is not ugly, nor wrong, nor broken. It is simply you in your purest form. And if you are a manifestation of the Big Bang, an expression of the original force of the universe, then your every step, your every gesture, your every thought is the cosmos itself moving. The universe breathes through you. It knows itself through your eyes, hears itself through your ears. You are the point where the whole becomes aware of itself. That's why, when you try to define who you are, you feel frustrated, like biting your own teeth, like seeing your own eyes without a mirror. The real you cannot be defined. It can only be lived. It is not in a place, it is not in a name, it is not in a story. It is in everything you are right now. And that is no small thing. That is divine. Because the divine is not above, nor outside, nor after. It is here, it is within, it is now. Every moment is sacred. Every being is a spark of infinity. Every life is a unique expression of eternity. And when you realize this, when there is no longer any effort to be something else, something deep inside you relaxes. An old, almost invisible tension that has been with you forever begins to dissolve. It is as if time itself stops pushing. You stop chasing life and realize that it is already happening right where you are. And this is as liberating as it is terrifying. Because true freedom comes with no guarantees. It offers no security, no promises. It is naked, raw, unarmed. It just is what it is. The mind, of course, will protest. It will want plans, definitions, goals. It will try to rein in the vastness of the present moment, but the mind does not understand that the now is immeasurable. The now is infinite because it never ends. It renews itself with every breath. It is eternal because it does not belong to time. And in this now, you are everything. You are the silence between words, the space between thoughts, the pause between heartbeats. Life is not a task. It is not a problem to be solved, nor a ladder to be climbed. It is like music, and no one listens to a song expecting to reach the last note. We listen because we like to listen, because each chord, each pause, each nuance has its own value. In the same way, the meaning of life is not somewhere far away in the future. It is here in this moment, in the way the sun touches your skin, in the taste of coffee, in the look of someone you love. But we have been conditioned to think otherwise, to believe that we must become something in order to be worthy. That only later, when we are better, more productive, more enlightened, more something, then we can relax and live. But this is the biggest trap of all, because you will never reach that later. No matter how hard you run, the horizon always gets further away. The only way out of this race is to stop. Stop and look, stop and listen, stop and be. And then you begin to realize that everything is much more subtle than it seemed. Certainties harden the vision, but doubt, openness, not knowing. These are the true teachers. They put you in touch with the mystery. And the mystery is not to be solved, it is to be lived. Life, when it is not filtered by concepts, is hauntingly beautiful. Every detail vibrates with a brilliance that can only be seen by eyes unaccustomed to judging. You are not here to prove anything. You are not here to win applause, to accumulate merit, to build a legacy. You are here to experience yourself, to be that wave of the ocean that you are, without trying to be the whole ocean. And yet, ironically, you are the whole ocean, because the wave is not separate from the water. You are not separate from existence. This recognition doesn't come with fanfare. It doesn't need rituals, titles, or systems. It can happen right now, in the middle of your ordinary routine. It can happen while you're washing the dishes, looking up at the sky, listening to the sound of the wind. Enlightenment is not a trophy, it's a gift. It's the moment when you stop fighting the flow and simply flow. The great dance of life excludes nothing. It includes pleasure and pain, birth and death, joy and sadness. It's all part of the choreography. And you don't have to understand all the steps. You just have to dance. And when you dance without fear, without reservations, without the obsession of doing it right, something extraordinary happens. You disappear. And at the same time, everything that is appears in you. And it is in this disappearance that the real you emerges. Not as a defined figure, a static personality, but as an open field of possibilities. A silent space where anything can happen. The idea of a solid, fixed me with clear boundaries begins to seem like a cosmic joke. Because in fact this me that you carry like a badge with name, profession, history is only the surface. It is the foam of the wave. But there is an immeasurable depth beneath this foam, and it is silent, eternal, inexpressible. You begin to see that you no longer have to resist what arises. Anger, fear, desire, joy, all are allowed, all are accepted. You are no longer a battlefield, trying to control every thought, every emotion. You become a space, a stage, where these experiences pass like clouds in the sky. You no longer have to identify with them. You can just observe them, feel them, let them go. And in that letting go, that allowing true peace is born. But this is not a special state that only a few achieve. This is available to everyone at any time. The problem is that we have been trained not to trust ourselves. We trust others more, experts, leaders, manuals, than our own direct perception. We have been taught to doubt our inner voice, to distrust our instincts, to ignore the call of our hearts. And that's why we live alienated, because we are trying to live with old maps in new territories. We are trying to understand the present with ideas from the past. But life is alive, and everything that is alive escapes control. There is no formula, there is no definitive method. There is only attention, presence, listening, and trust. Trust, not as blind belief, but as a radical surrender to what is happening now. Trusting in life is like swimming. You don't hold on to the water to float. You let go, you surrender. And so it is with everything. Love does not blossom through effort. Joy is not manufactured by willpower. Truth is not found in concepts. What we are is spontaneous. It is organic. It is unrepeatable. And when we stop trying to fit in, to mold ourselves, to please, or to belong, then we finally touch authenticity. The soul breathes a sigh of relief, because it was not made to fit into molds. It was made to shine, to express itself without fear, and each of us is a unique expression of the whole. No two beings are the same. Every leaf is different. Every star shines differently. And you too are a singular event in the cosmos. Imagine this. For billions of years, the universe has experimented with forms, forces, elements. And now, for a brief moment, it manifests as you. This is not chance. This is not banal. This is divine. You are a window through which the universe contemplates itself. Your every gesture, your every thought, your every choice, everything is a brushstroke on the infinite canvas of existence. And yet you try to fit into small models. You try to follow patterns that were not made for you. Why? Because we forget. We forget the original silence. We forget the pulse of life that beats in everything. We forget that we are not separate, that we are not here by accident. And that is why the traditions speak of remembering. Not of learning something new, but of remembering what we have always known, but had buried beneath the demands of the world. Remembering who we are. Not as a concept, but as direct experience. And when you remember, everything changes. You begin to live lightly. You begin to act effortlessly. Not because there is no pain or challenge, but because there is a greater space within you that welcomes everything. You become like the sky, immense, open, available. The clouds come and go, but the sky remains. And you realize, I am the sky, not the clouds. And then perhaps for the first time, you begin to move in the world without carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. You walk through the streets as if you were dancing with the ground. You breathe as if you were celebrating the simple fact of being here. You look at the people around you, and you no longer see strangers, threats, or obstacles. You see mirrors. You see other expressions of the same mystery, because everything is you in other forms. And this is not a metaphor, it is literal. The separation between the I and the other begins to dissolve, not because you force it, but because you see clearly that it never really existed. It was just an idea, a convention, an illusion maintained by fear. And without this fear, life becomes smooth. Even in the midst of pain, there is a serenity that springs from acceptance, because you stop demanding that reality be different from what it is. You stop fighting the inevitable. You stop resisting the flow of the now, and that in itself is freedom. Not an external freedom dependent on circumstances, but an internal freedom independent of anything. You become like water, adaptable, flexible, invincible. Because water never fights against obstacles, it flows around them. It does not break, it molds. And so you too begin to live. And in this life, something miraculous happens. You find yourself. Not in the terms you expected, not in the image you projected, but in an almost scandalous simplicity. You discover that you are just you, no more, no less, and that is all, and that is enough. You see that the attempt to be special was just the fear of not being seen. And when you truly see yourself, when you look at yourself without filters, without judgment, with eyes of compassion, you realize that there is nothing wrong. There never was. You were just sleeping, dreaming that you were small, dreaming that you were separate, dreaming that you needed to improve in order to deserve to exist. But now awake, you smile, because you realize that you were from the beginning perfect in your imperfection, complete in your incompleteness, divine in your humanity. And then, paradoxically, you begin to act, no longer out of lack, but out of abundance, no longer trying to fill a void, but overflowing. Your actions cease to be efforts and become expressions. You love not to be loved, but because you are love. You create not to be recognized, but because creation pulses within you like a silent volcano. You speak not to convince, but to share. You live not to get somewhere, but because life itself is destiny. And that changes everything. Your relationship with time is transformed. The future is no longer an obsession, the past is no longer a burden, and the present finally reveals itself as what it always was, the only place where life truly happens. You realize that each moment is complete. It doesn't need to be added to or corrected. It doesn't need to be another. It is, just as you are. And that's the big secret. Life isn't waiting for you somewhere far away. It's calling you now, here in this instant. The difficulty, of course, is that we have been taught to doubt this simplicity. We have been trained to complicate things, to look far away for what is near, to seek formulas, gurus, promises. But the truth is not outside. It is not in a book. It is not in a technique. It is not in a retreat. It is where you least expect it, inside. Within the silence between thoughts, within the space between heartbeats, within the pause between one breath and the next. That is where the eternal lives. That is where what you are lives. And when you access this space, even for a second, everything around you takes on a different light. The colors become more vivid. The sounds become clearer, the smells become more intense, because the mind stops interfering and you finally begin to perceive reality as it is. And it is extraordinary, even in its simplest details. A glass of water, a ray of sunlight, a look, a touch, a shared silence. All of this becomes poetry, because you have become poetry, because the poet in you has awakened, and now everything is verse. Everything is dance, everything is sacred, and when you become poetry, you discover that you no longer need to narrate your life. You can simply live it. You stop being the controlling author, trying to adjust each chapter, and become the paper on which the ink of the universe writes effortlessly. Your every step becomes a spontaneous verse, each breath a living stanza. And this does not mean that everything is always easy, calm, predictable. No, it just means that even chaos has music, even discomfort has beauty, even the unexpected has its secret dance. Because everything, absolutely everything, is part of the great symphony of being. It is then that you realize that the world as you saw it before was merely a reflection of your resistance. When you begin to accept yourself, the world begins to seem more acceptable, not because it changes, but because you change. Your perception ceases to be filtered through the lens of fear and becomes guided by presence. The other ceases to be a threat and becomes part of the same living organism. Life ceases to be a sequence of obstacles and becomes a field of revelations, and you cease to be a problem to be solved and recognize yourself as a mystery to be contemplated. This change is as profound as it is simple. It requires no effort, just honesty. Looking at yourself, without masks, without excuses, without trying to appear better than you are. And in doing so, you discover that you don't need to be better. You just need to be whole. And being whole is integrating everything light and shadow, laughter and tears, knowing and not knowing. You no longer need to choose a side. You can be both. You can be paradoxical. You can be human. And it is precisely by embracing your humanity that you touch the divine. Because the sacred is not in being above life, but in being deep within it. The sacred is in washing the dishes attentively, in listening to someone with an open heart, in being present as the world turns. It is in living without reservations, in loving without guarantees, in existing without hiding. This is spirituality, being so connected to the now that everything becomes a miracle. There is no need to seek distant retreats or accumulate esoteric concepts. Just listen to what has always been there, the sound of being. It is in the beating of your heart, in the warmth of your hands, in the space between your thoughts. It is in the depths of your eyes when you look with truth. It is in the silence that appears when you stop trying to understand and begin to simply feel. And what you feel when you allow yourself to truly feel is a vastness, a presence that needs no name, something that is not yours, but also does not belong to anyone else, something that simply is. And that is what it is. It is you. But not the you on your ID card, not the you in your biography, not the you of other people's expectations. It is the you that exists before any words, the you that is here now reading this breathing being, this one you are not afraid of, not because you are brave, but because you no longer see yourself as something separate. And fear, after all, is born of separation, of the idea that there is a vulnerable self in a hostile world. But when that idea dissolves, fear melts away like mist in the sun. And in place of fear, a space of trust emerges. Not a trust based on promises, but on presence. You trust because you are. Because you are. Because you see that everything happens and everything passes, and you remain as the space where everything happens and passes. And then life ceases to be a battlefield and becomes a field of flowers. Even the pain, even the grief, even the loss, all of this is accepted as part of the whole. Because you understand that everything is movement, and movement cannot be imprisoned. Happiness, peace, love, all of this cannot be captured. It can only be lived, and if you try to hold on to it, it slips away. But if you allow it, if you open your hand, then everything comes. You finally learn to trust like someone who floats, and floating is a forgotten art, because it requires surrender. And we have been trained to resist, to maintain control, to swim against the current. But there comes a time when we get tired, a time when exhausted we let go. And in that letting go, we are carried by a current we didn't know existed. A silent, serene, wise current. It takes us not where we want to go, but where we need to be. And we discover that it is exactly the same place. And when we are led to where we need to be, we realize that we have been there all along. The now is not a destination, it is the origin. But to see it clearly, we must abandon the habit of constantly projecting ourselves into what has not yet happened. Time, as we conceive it, linear, progressive, cumulative, is merely a mental construct. Reality does not stretch from past to future, like a line. It pulses in circles, spirals, patterns that repeat and reinvent themselves. The now is the silent center of this movement, and when we anchor ourselves in this center, everything changes. Because we stop chasing life and start running with it. Time stops being an enemy and starts being a partner. And so we stop aging and start maturing. In this state, the I we were so afraid of losing begins to feel like a tight suit. You, Begin to peel away layer by layer all the assumed identities, the professional, the strong, the wise, the kind, the spiritual. And beneath all these layers is a nakedness that is not fragile, but free. You find yourself not as someone, but as a space where anything can happen. A space that does not judge, does not define, does not limit. You find yourself as the stage of life itself. And on this stage, all characters are welcome. You can be happy or sad, calm or agitated, right or wrong. Everything is allowed because everything is transitory. The depth of life is not in holding a pose, but in allowing each emotion to express itself fully and then to wash away like the tide. Sadness comes, and you welcome it. Joy comes, and you dance with it. Fear comes, and you watch it. Love comes, and you live it. Nothing needs to be held. Nothing needs to be avoided. Everything is experience. Everything is part of the process. And in this process, something is revealed. You are not what you feel. You are not what you think. You are not what you do. You are the one who witnesses, the one who observes the flow of life with the eyes of silence. And silence, far from being empty, is the most intense fullness that can be known. It is from silence that music is born. It is in it that peace rests. It is what sustains every word spoken, every step taken, every encounter experienced. When you dive into this silence, you realize that everything you were looking for was there. The answer that never came. The calm that seemed unattainable. The love that always eluded you. It was all there in the silence. Because silence is not absence. It is presence in its purest form, and it is in silence that you reconnect with the mystery, a mystery that does not need to be solved, that does not need to be named, a mystery that only asks for one thing to be. Be like the tree that grows without haste, like the river that flows without a map, like the moon that changes phase without asking permission. Be as you are without trying to fit into an idea, because any idea of you is less than you are, and any attempt to be better than you are already starts from the premise that there is something wrong. But there isn't. There never was. You are not a project, you are a phenomenon, and as a phenomenon it cannot be explained, it can only be lived, it can only be felt, it can only be celebrated. True wisdom is not in knowing more, but in needing. To know less, you are in trust, in surrendering, in living with an open heart, even if it is broken. Because a broken heart is a heart that has loved, and to love even without guarantees is the supreme courage. Yes, the world is imperfect. People fail. Days are uncertain. But still there is beauty. Still there is grace. Still there is something greater than fear. And that something is within you, not as a distant ideal, but as a silent flame that has never gone out. And now, perhaps you can see it more clearly, because you have stopped searching outside, because you have allowed yourself to come home. And home is not a place. It is a state of being. It is the awareness that you are already what you have always sought, that you do not need anything else to begin to truly live, that there is no prize waiting at the end because life is already the present. It is already the miracle. It is already the mystery. And all that is left for you is a simple, profound, and powerful choice to live as if you know it, and to live as if you knew this is to walk through the world with your eyes open not only to the shapes, but to the invisible depths that pulse behind them all. It is to see a face, and not only see its expression, but to feel the eternity that animates it. It is to touch a tree and realize that it also breathes, that it also feels, that it too is an expression of the same silent intelligence that formed you. It is to realize that each moment, no matter how ordinary it may seem, carries within itself a hidden eternity. The now is not an interval between what has passed and what will come. The now is eternity incarnate. It is the only time that truly exists, and being present to it is the purest form of wisdom. That's why the masters, the poets, the mystics all end up pointing to the same place, the here, the now, being, not as a concept but as an experience. Because there is no truth deeper than this. What you are is already enough. There is nothing to achieve, nothing to prove, nothing to fix. Everything you've been told about improving, about growing, about evolving, becomes irrelevant when you understand that everything is already okay. That the process of becoming was never about achieving something outside, but about dissolving everything that prevents you from being what you already are. But this does not mean passivity. On the contrary, this realization brings a new vitality, a serene joy, a creative impulse that arises not from lack, but from fullness. You begin to move not because you are running away from something, but because you want to express something. Like a flower opening to the sun, you open yourself to life, and everything you do, everything you touch, begins to carry this presence. You become a channel of mystery, an instrument through which the universe sings its own song. This song has no fixed chorus. It is improvised at every moment, and you just need to be attentive, sensitive, available. There is no external conductor. There is no definitive score. There is only the sound, the body, the feeling. And if you trust this flow, if you surrender to your own rhythm, you will discover that everything is dancing with you. Even what seems out of tune, even what hurts, even what escapes you. Everything is part of the greater harmony that you may not yet understand, but that you feel. And this feeling is more reliable than any theory, because the mind may doubt, but the heart knows, the body knows, the soul knows, and when you live from this silent knowing, something changes in the world around you. Because the external world is nothing more than the mirror of the internal world. And if you are at peace, the world begins to reflect that peace. Not because everything becomes perfect, but because you no longer demand perfection. Because you have learned to see beauty in the imperfect. To recognize the sacred in the banal. To love what is as it is. This is the true revolution. And it doesn't start with flags or systems. It starts in the silence of a heart that remembers itself, in the gaze of someone who finally sees themselves, in the conscious breathing of someone who has stopped running. And this revolution, silent and gentle, has the power to transform everything. Because it doesn't impose, doesn't convince, doesn't force. It just is. And being in the end is the most powerful force in the universe. You didn't come here to be anything else. You came to be you. With all your light and shadow, with all your mistakes and successes, with all your living complexity. You came to feel, to experience, to learn and unlearn. You came to love and be loved, to fall and get up, to laugh and cry. You came to live, and living isn't about following a script. It's about improvising with an open heart. It's about dancing without knowing the steps. It's about trusting the sound, the body, the moment. And in this authentic living, you become free. Free from expectations, from judgments, from pressures. Free to be who you are here and now. And this now becomes your home, your temple, your universe. Because there is nothing more real than it. And there is nothing more powerful than someone who chooses to live fully in the now. Someone who gets up every day not to conquer the world, but to meet it. Someone who looks in the mirror and recognizes the miracle of being alive. Someone who has finally become who they are. And when you finally become who you are, you realize that there is nothing more to be done. The circle closes, not as an end, but as a return to the beginning, only now with new eyes. The same life that once seemed like a problem to solve, a journey to conquer, a burden to bear, now reveals itself as a dance. And in this dance you are neither the choreographer nor the observer. You are the movement itself, the step you take for yourself, the sound that arises from silence, the expression of the ineffable that can only be expressed by living it. You no longer need to ask, "What is my purpose?" because the question itself dissolves when you are fully present. Purpose ceases to be a goal and becomes a way of being. Purpose is to breathe with awareness, to walk with presence, to touch life with your bare hands without fear of feeling too much. Purpose is to love without guarantees, to create without expecting results, to give without expecting anything in return. Purpose is to live in such a way that the simple fact of being here is already the greatest offering you could make to the universe. And when you live like this, everything takes on new life. The little things become sacred. The noise of the city becomes a mantra. Traffic becomes meditation. Breakfast becomes a ritual. The look of a stranger on the street becomes a mirror of eternity, because now you see, and whoever sees loves, not as a passing emotion but as a state of presence, a love that does not demand, that does not bind, that does not judge, a love that simply is, like the sun that shines for everyone without choosing, like the rain that wets the ground without discriminating. Life, then, is no longer something that happens to you. It is something that happens as you. You are life itself, experiencing it in the first person. And everything that once seemed like lack, deficiency, distance, is now fullness. Not because circumstances have changed, but because you have changed. Because you have stopped identifying with forms and recognized yourself as the background. You have stopped clinging to certainties and have opened yourself to mystery. You have stopped trying to be something and have simply allowed yourself to be. And being in this sense is the greatest act of courage, because it means letting go of all armor. It means standing naked before the mystery. It means trusting that even if you don't understand everything, you are exactly where you need to be. That life with all its madness, its beauty, its impermanence is on your side. It always has been. It was just waiting for you to stop fighting it. Now you know you are the Big Bang in human form. You are the ocean playing at being a wave. You are the eternal experimenting with time, and with each breath you become more and more of what you already were. Not by effort, but by surrender. Not by achievement, but by remembrance, because what you are was never lost. It was just asleep. And now awake, you see that there are no more questions. Just life in its silent. Dan's inviting you to participate, not as a spectator, but as a living part of the show. So live. Live courageously, live tenderly, live gratefully, and most of all, live as if you know once and for all that being who you are is enough. If this message touched you, like the video so it can reach more people. Share it with someone who needs to remember who they really are. And if you want to continue exploring these reflections, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because here the journey is inward and each step is a return home. Until the next dive.